Here we go, people. This is Dr. Zoo telling you what the world's happening at the moment. What a crazy weekend it's been. Let me say that for sure. Today, 1st of June, 2026, Monday. Now, obviously, we do the mandatory thumbs up. If someone listens, that's all we need. You don't need everybody, just one person out there in Zucoin world as we bring together the family, the team, the early adopters of Zucoin. And let me say, it was actually a pinch and a punch for the first of the month. All here, Sunshine Coast. Let's go. But that's it. That's all we need. That's all we need. And we are on fire. Now, Dr. Zoo today, I want to get into a couple of topics today. Firstly, it's not a topic. This is just an update. I don't have any more news on the great Austrac. So fingers and toes crossed, people, because that's going to be unbelievable whichever way that goes, as I said before on the show. We're very excited about that. As each day goes past, Dr. Zoo gets that more warm, fuzzy feeling that it's going to be a game changer if we go down the registration road. Didn't necessarily want to do that, but that's how it can be. Or we get the nod that says we don't need to worry about the compliance issue from Austrac. But at this stage, nothing more has come back through that. What I can say is that the team on all fronts have been absolutely on fire. Absolutely on fire. Now, I haven't had the latest hot off the press today from the Zootopia Riley team. That's Riley Redford, everybody. But they were inching very close with some of this testing on the iOS Apple stuff that's looking fantastic. So we won't preempt it. We won't put the kibosh on it. We're just going to let it out there that they reckon they have found a way through as a game changer, and we'll have a bit more news on that. So let's just fingers and toes crossed that that comes through this afternoon, and we can update you on Thursday on that front. Absolutely, because that really, really takes us into the stratosphere, a bit like SpaceX, which is a topic that's also hot off the press. That's why we introduced that song today by the great Willie Nelson, hot off the press, because it's all going to pot for those sort of companies, and a big development on the risks that Dr. Zoo has talked about with the custodial cryptos out there. Actually, it does worry him a little bit, because one of those discussion points today is about Tether. You might not know that, but they call it USDT, Tether, which is a part of the stablecoin family. You've either got at the moment USDC or USDT, and it's nerve-wracking about what is going on. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. But again, we sit there in the sweet spot between what you maintain your sovereign rights with the Zucoin wallet and your Zucoins versus the custodial issue and the controls from around the world that are coming into play as a result of that, which makes it very, very scary, people. I can tell you. Another warning from the great Dr. Zoo. Doesn't deliberately sort of want to put this on front and center too much, but that's what happens, which is what it's all about over the weekend when this sort of news comes hot off the press. We'll talk about that in a second. Willie Nelson. Now, look, just to give you some background, what a great visionary he is, and it's all about people's prospects in terms of whether things are half glass empty or half glass full. Now, remember, Dr. Zoo always loves a little bit of physics here and there and always chats about, actually, welcome, Mekong. Mekong, you are on board. We love having you people on side listening to some of the wackiness of Dr. Zoo's stories. You've got to listen carefully because there's a bit of sarcasm there. There's a bit of everything, really, and you've got to pick it up. We're not here to educate people on the left or right, but we're down the middle, right down the middle, as we bring up these discussions on all points for everybody to listen into. What I was saying, Willie Nelson. I'll just tell you this quickly. Willie Nelson, many, many years ago, when Lance Armstrong, the great American cyclist, 7 Tour de France's in the bag, and then he was naughty. Turned out that he was a naughty boy by taking steroids and won those races. In fact, how ironic is that? We now have sporting events that show the firepower of what these people can do when they are on steroids. I was referring to the swimming not that long ago, last week, I think. But Willie Nelson comes out of the blocks, and a reporter asked him and said, Willie, What's your thoughts on Lance Armstrong being pinged for 7-time champion on steroids during that entire journey? Now, this is where the half glass empty and full comes in. Others have said it's terrible, terrible, it's disgusting. What a way to win. You know, it's just outright criminal. Criminal. Not old Willie. Willie comes out and says, well, he said, I've been on weed for a long time. I know on pot. Hence that song. You can sense that world's all going to pot. But, he says, any bloke on drugs that can win 7 times Tour de France, he said, it's amazing. He said, because when I look back at my career, he said, when I'm on pot, he said, I'm lucky to get on the bike, let alone win 7 Tour de France's. So you've got to hand it to him. Now, there you go. There is the flip side of a particular situation. And this is relevant. This is relevant to crypto because, again, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And today's is going to delve into and dig into this USDT issue on the weekend, which is absolutely mind-blowing, really. Another one of those little treats that we have where the FBI wants to catch the crooks, does a marvellous job, puts 18 people in the lockhouse, and then loses hundreds of millions of dollars because they forgot to tell everybody else that this is not real. The coin that they created, which was a nonsense coin in order to catch the crooks. They got the crooks all right, and they got everyone else dragged into it as well. So there you have a government body doing what it did. And the retail guys, that's you and I, little fellas off the street, got burnt. And then you've got to go and seek restitution and try and get that money. It doesn't seem to make much sense. We have a couple of questions here we're going to lead into. We're going to lead into Helpful Settler. Your question is, why doesn't the price change from 205 on Zootopia if people are trading? Now, Helpful Settler, I'm going to be helpful. Dr. Zoo is going to be helpful because there is a slight indication in the tone of your message, if you can ever possibly read tones into text messages, that you have been naughty. You haven't been reading. Nobody's trading. Nobody's trading in relation to the Zootopia app, which is the live feed into the Zucoin wallet. So that was the last price before we went off the soft launch. But there are people directly trading in wallet to wallet, which doesn't create a live feed because that's private sovereign trading between parties, save and except for the last pickup in the split chain that we can see, which is on, for your information, Mr. Helpful or Mrs. Helpful Settler. That's the situation in that you can see the on myzucoins.org, you can see some of the volumes which goes through peer-to-peer, which is Zucoin wallet to Zucoin wallet. The nature of the actual live trading is when Zootopia gets switched back on, which we all are well aware of where that's up to with the Austrac at the moment. And once that goes green, those green lights go boom shakalaka, you are off and running with a live feed. Whether that be 10 cents, 20 cents, $10 or 10,000 or $100,000, that will be the live feed 24/7. It will not stop, and you will see adjustments flickering thick and fast because, unlike the soft launch, those trading days that we had over that period, where I think from memory 3.18 odd million coins changed hands for millions of dollars in total. That feed was based on the old usage of the 90-second time clocks, which related to the security, the two-factor authentication between two peers off exchange, off Zootopia, that then had that pricing. But now we have the instant transferability, which we're expecting should really heat up because people will be instantly moving coins between each other, which means there's instant trading prices, which means, unlike that old slowpoke out there, that Bitcoin, the Satoshi beast that has been created, and the blockchain is used all around the world with other bits and pieces and things like the Ethereum and even the great Tether that we're going to talk about in a tick, the tick Tether. We're going to talk about that. You will find out that at 7 transactions per second, that is pretty hopeless. But when you start ratcheting that up to the Zucoin firepower of instant two-factor authentication, you cannot be beaten, and you won't be beaten. It's just a case of the word getting out, which is what we're doing, and prepping ourselves and building out the modelling that we see, which hasn't changed on the original updates on the Zoo AI. You can see that on zucoins.com, people. Go back and read. You can read that, I think, from reference article 31 again, the ZuVision. It talks about how that's all going to come together, and it is, and how that should impact long-term on the price, which is what we're all keen to see and do, and really put that hard yards into that price, because a couple of things. Dr. Zoo needs the $1,000 US per coin for the Gulfstream G800, which is up front and center about. You will hear about that the moment that is delivered. That comes back to the price of the coin. Got to do it the hard way now. Yes, we had a bit of a setback, people. You might have seen the weekend. It was that's the all going to pot there on the weekend was the great sky glider. We don't know what happened, why, but at 2:38 p.m. on Saturday afternoon, we're looking at $10 million in the bank. If he won that race, 10 million as a stallion. And by 2:38 and 10 seconds, we were back to zero or close to it, because something happened. Something happened in the barriers, referring to the race in Queensland at 2:38 p.m. And let me say this, it was a shocker. Dr. Zoo's seen a lot of things, and that old roller coaster, I tell you what, that was right at the bottom end of the dipper. Bottom end of the dipper, people. It's the quickest 10 million we've seen vaporise ever. You know, Zucoins is on its way back, and baby, it's on the way up, whereas the dipper, it was terrible. But as they say, that's racing. You get back into it, and there you go. It's looks like he had a bit of an accident out of the barriers, or he got collided with one of the other horses, and the race was over within the first 50 metres. Extraordinary, really. So now let's look at these questions again to circle back, because I think we've addressed helpful settlers problem. The price doesn't change because it's fixed as the last price. What we just said, when Zootopia switches on big time, you will be back. You will be back with the pricing live feeds, and you can sit there 24 hours a day. You can set your clock. You can wake up at 3 in the morning, Australian Eastern time, Eastern Standard Time, and you will be able to just look at that screen and say, look at this. This is the current price from somewhere in the world. It's a big world. We haven't gone out into trading, intergalactic universal trading at this stage, because we're waiting on Elon to get his shit together and get us onto Mars so we can populate out there and start trading with our fellow humanoids and others on Mars. It's going to be an exciting time in the life of this young generation. I said to my granddaughter actually on the weekend, she was, it's funny really. You think about, you sort of don't prepare yourself for grandkids. It's a bizarre concept, but you get away with a lot. You can load them up with raspberry juice and lollies and chocolates and TV, and then you just hand them back to the parents, and they pay a heavy price. They pay a heavy price, but she was very content, very happy. Love seeing her poppy, and hopefully she might even be listening this afternoon for the first time on Dr. Zoo. So, Paigey, if you're out there, it was a great weekend. Good stuff. But look, she's the sort of kid that'll end up being on Mars. And, you know, if Dr. Zoo can live long enough and get that phone call that says, you know, things are going well on Mars, Pop, because of the old Elon Musk, this it'll be an extraordinary time in our lives. Now, excited champion. We haven't touched on the topics yet, because we're going to get through a couple of these questions today, and then we can talk about my concerns with stable coins. Unbelievable. Anyway, the question, excited champion, is the quantum computing issue discussion leading to another potential delay in marketing and launch? The answer is no, not at all. What it leads to is protecting your ass from losing your coins when quantum is unleashed on the world. So if you had Bitcoin today, you should be nervous. If you had Ethereum today, you should be nervous. You should be nervous about your bank accounts, your private data. You should be nervous about anything that's electronic. The only way quantum computing can't affect you right now, leading into the future, is if you are sending letters in the mail through Australia Post. If you've got that humble little letter in an envelope and you put a stamp on it, you are protected from quantum computing, as far as Dr. Zoo is aware. So we don't have any delays to do with quantum. We're just making sure you're well aware of that we're going to be ahead of the game, because all of a sudden we turn into front runners and leaders of quantum protection for your benefit. We don't have to. Dr. Zoo can run like the rest of the world and decide, well, bugger it. Why do we want to spend another couple of $1 million for the benefit of everybody else in quantum when we can just sit back and relax, cash our chips in early, get the $1,000 and the jet, fly around the world, and let some other poor schmuck worry about quantum? That's probably the half glass empty view if you want to take that approach. So don't come back with negative stuff, people. It's all about that. It puts that jigsaw puzzle in play. It makes these things work out better for the long term, because once you start unleashing the Zoo token fractions, think about this. We're talking about hundreds of millions or billions of fractions that are relating to everyday usage between merchants and consumers, what we have described in the ZuVision. Then quantum will play a big role, because those participants in those tokens will get the protection. Now, there's no guarantees, by the way, because quantum's a bit of a funny little beast. But at this stage, when that version 3 comes out, you won't even care, really. All of a sudden, it'll be a nice migration and transition, and you're protected. And it's, it's a bit like putting down the little fuzzy, little soft pillow at night, knowing that no one's going to take it off you or break into the house, because you are quantum protected. Unlike the poor schmucks, they're going to have a lot of problems with Bitcoin, people. There's a lot of issues out there, and there's a lot more happening, and there's even a lot more happening with things like, which again, I'll sneak into a bit of discussion shortly on Tether and impacts upon your lives and the way the world is, because these things haven't been thought out clearly, and the ability to try and transition people with current systems that are affected by quantum in your day-to-day lives, look out, it's going to get ugly. So don't worry about that. I'll continue with the question. Now, excited champion, will we hear I've made a decision to delay the launch until the dev team has finished testing quantum, due to be completed late 2026? Yeah, no, it is a half glass empty question. I'm glad you've acknowledged that. I'm glad you've put that on the table, because I've just answered you. No. If you don't want quantum, you tell us, and what we could do for excited champion, by the way, we could isolate possibly your wallet to be not quantum protected later in the year, and use you as a test case. We could use you as a test case to see how long it takes before it implodes. Maybe that's what we do. Maybe we have a list of people that want to not worry about it, and they get an extra bonus coins, if you like, for testing the non-quantum compliant situation. We made quantum decision some years ago, people. If you read the earlier material provided by our CTO, Robert Novak, this has not been a last-minute think tank operation on quantum. It's been on the agenda for a couple of years. There's been a lot of planning going into this one way or the other, whether we were launched or not. The question is you've got to make it easy in order to switch over, if you like, to quantum, because once you start getting massive amounts of data on a system, it's very difficult to migrate and transition, and you want to make that migration very simple, which is what has been behind the scenes for some time. Quantum is the icing on the cake for us. It gives that marketing edge. It gives that firepower to say, no, you guys haven't got quantum. We have quantum protection, that is. So, and you don't, it's sort of, a lot of the stuff we do is not last minute stuff. I mean, if you look at the history, in May of 2025, by the way, we were looking at wanting to go live with the notifications for instant transferability, May of 2025. Now, who would have thought? Now, you don't deliberately delay it. You just wander into the world as it stands. And next thing, it turns out that Apple has this full control on the way in which notifications work, and they botch up the whole system. Either it was ill thought out in the first place, or B, nobody's bothered to fix it because nobody has got an instant transfer of crypto. Let me just remind you, knock yourself out. Tell Dr. Zoo if there is a crypto out there that does instant transferability, not layer 2 stuff, people. I'm not talking about the little band-aid fixes that sit on top of the blockchain of layer 1. There's a big difference. Look it up yourself and you will see. Litecoin or Lightning is a fix. It's a band-aid package over the primary layer 1 Bitcoin blockchain. They will not ever have, in the current format, instant transferability. But because that's the way in which Dr. Zoo wanted to go many years ago, which is on record, people, they didn't make this stuff up. We had to suffer an 8-month process of rejigging the entire back-end engine of how notifications works. And that is where there was an 8-month delay, but it's not a delay because we made a decision to delay. It's just a decision that this is what you face. You put up with it. A bit like this horse on Saturday. Yes, there was a setback. Yes, we didn't deliberately want him to run poorly. We didn't want the horse to sort of come second last. We never set out at 2:38 p.m. on Saturday afternoon to say, let's see if this horse can run slow. All right? Let's see if we can have a slow horse. All right? You don't set out an agenda when you have vision, big picture, to do the entire opposite of what you actually want to achieve. You've got to go through. You've got to smash through that wall, people. That's what we did with notifications. 8 months later, so I understand it from memory, 22nd of December, massive day before Christmas. There it was, the world's first instant transfer of crypto, which is going to impact on your lives because, well, you know, you patiently went through the pain barrier, and without that, you wouldn't be talking about the size and capacity of trading on Zootopia to the extent that we want. We want hundreds of millions, if not billions, of transactions. We want to knock the hell out of Visa and MasterCard. We want merchants to be accepting instant fractional transfers, creating wealth and distributing their advertising dollars to you, the consumer, directly. Just stick with the big picture, people. Yes, we all want to get millionaire status. We get that. That's the easy part. Dr. Zoo would have had a lot more money in the trust account after Saturday, but by 2:38 and 10 seconds, that plan changed dramatically. Not because Dr. Zoo wanted a slow horse, but because that's how life is. And you get on with it, move on. Same with quantum. Quantum has always been on the agenda, and that will always be a feature of making sure the finality of the capacity of the total engine, that is Zucoins and split chain, that is Zootopia, that is Zukaz. All those things come together and we can sit back and say, there we go. One of the great crypto products of the 21st century, quantum Zucoins. Quantum, because it's coming. It's going to be here and it's going to cause a lot of grief. And we'll be reading about that. It'll be worse than the crypto losses that have incurred over the last many years because people, you know, got on board these things and said, oh, well, we don't need utility. We don't need productivity of these crypto. We'll just speculate. We'll just get out there and speculate like SpaceX. No one wants to do the maths of SpaceX. It's mathematically improbable that SpaceX could even return a profit on the scale required for the capitalization they're talking about. $1.5 to $2 trillion. It's just nonsense. Nonsense. It's so far out of whack, it's not funny. But people will run along, get on the Elon bandwagon. They hope that the capitalization jumps from 1.5 to 3 trillion and they've doubled their money. They put 1,000 in and they get 2,000 out for the risk they're taking. You've only got to think about how many people is required to get on a spaceship to end up in Mars. Good Lord. We can hardly get enough people on a train from Albury to Melbourne. Think about that. We haven't even got a bullet train from Sydney to Gosford. Can't even go for a swim. Takes you 3 hours to get up there and have a swim if you want to go to the beach at Terrigal. It's absolutely crazy. And yet, we think we can make the maths work when you raise billions. In fact, raise 80 billions and have a capitalization of 1.5 trillion, you think it's going to work. And no one's questioning it. No one's questioning the maths. Tesla, we knew we'd run out of people to sell cars to. Now we've got a battery problem. We don't know what to do with them. We can't all that chemical crap that goes in it. We can't work out what to do with it, but maybe we send it to Mars. Let's think about that. So stick to the plan. Stick to the plan. Eager Gem, he wraps it up with quantum computing is not needed as an excuse to delay launch. No, correct. That is spot on. We've never had excuses to delay anything. We have issues that confront the business and we face them. We face them head on. So if you take that, even the program of Zootopia needed to solve issues on a couple of fronts. One of those issues which took a bit of extra time, which is probably doesn't concern any early adopters, but certainly worried Dr. Zoo, and that was things like reversals and chargebacks, because the global payment processors were causing problems on the way money moved from person A to person B. Dr. Zoo solved that. In fact, that was a 15-year exercise to get through that because of the old Easy Bond days. And in fact, we should be very, very pleased with ourselves, people, that a lot of the old registrations and the current compliance with Easy Bonds on as a remitter, and there's been millions spent, not your monies, but Dr. Zoo's monies, that are now giving us some great heads up and wonderful program moving forward, because those compliance issues were well and truly met as a registered AUSTRAC service designated provider, which we get the benefit of now. So what comes around goes around. You just got to sort of, and don't panic. I know you're worried now about Skyglider and where he sits, but look, we've got a few ideas. We haven't given up hope on the boy, and we never do. But like, as people will recall, the millions that went into the business here because of alligator blood. People should be thanking alligator blood, which is a term that I named him, term from poker. It means to stay resilient, tenacious, and never give up. Never give up. That's the key. Stay with it, and that's exactly where we're at. So just sit tight. That's what's happening now. But yes, you're in the hands of AUSTRAC and Eager Gem. AUSTRAC will provide enough for delays. We will get to day 85. AUSTRAC will need one piece of paper and 90 days will start again, and so on. Well, Eager Gem, that's life. That's tough titties, as they say. That is tough because you're dealing with the regulator. So if you've got a problem, you ring up Albo. Give Albo and Jimbo a call, and I'm sure they will help you out. I'm sure they will sit down and say, listen, there's someone called Eager Gem that's really eager, and he's worried about AUSTRAC, even though that AUSTRAC's been allocated billions of dollars, and they're busy. They're not very much. So far, they've been fantastic. I've got to say, they're one of the better government organisations Dr. Zoo's come across. And just remember, if you get tired and worry about what AUSTRAC can and can't do, go to the website. There's a link there on the blogs called AUSTRAC, and you'll see that we successfully overcome a lot of hurdles very quickly as dealing with AUSTRAC in the early days under the old legislation. So don't be disheartened, Eager Gem. You just stay eager, beager, and you'll be fine. You will be fine. So whatever happens, happens. We suck it and see it, but we don't sit around sucking our thumbs. We don't sit around moping, worrying about what AUSTRAC will or won't do, because the law says that's what they can do. And if they do that, well, that's bad luck. You just fill out the paper and send it in. So that's how that goes. But that doesn't mean to say we don't continue in preparation for the bigger picture, which includes the second version of ZooCAS that's coming, which is important. It includes the boys fine-tuning and tweaking the iOS problem that Apple, again, sadly, doesn't like deep links and doesn't like you to have the advantage of a simple press button when you're using PWA. Now, you might say, well, we could have had a native app. Well, let me tell you, if all Zucoin products, the Zucoin wallet, Zootopia, and, just for good measure, ZooCAS, had to go through Apple's iStore, you have no idea or comprehension of how difficult that is, because everything gets checked from a developer's perspective, and if they don't like it, they will get rid of it. And they are getting rid of an enormous amount of crypto wallets right as we speak, which means they don't even get to the public, people. They don't even see the light of day because there's a third party checking native apps. That's why, like visionaries that we are, it would have been a good goodness me, probably when the first spec papers went out in 2018 of this project, we decided through consultation with our incredibly ingenious CTO, Robert Novak, that a progressive web app was the way to go, despite our marketing teams saying we were crazy, because the only reason you go to the iStore is because humans are lazy and think they go and search apps and they can get access to that searchability through those iStore or the Google Store, and it makes it easy. But it turns out it's difficult. It's difficult. And we took the other road. We went PWA, Progressive Web Apps, which is what you have, which means we don't have any Apple oversight, which means we don't have any 30% of fees going to Apple, because that's the next thing. Suddenly your Zucoin transfers would not be free. Would not be free. Think about that. You couldn't do a fraction transfer. You'd be stuck because there'd be some fees coming out, especially when the merchants start wanting to make money through the Zoo tokens. And that would be possibly considered a fee that would come out at 30%, a train wreck. So we made those calls, did it the hard way, but it's paying great rewards right now, people. The PWA, and in fact, that's been the new game changer, especially when the European regulators got onto it and give Apple a bit of a touch up and wanted to free out that sort of market space, because Apple was naughty. They make billions on the back of the iStore and those subscription fees. Billions, tens of billions, billions of billions. That's how they make their money, controlling it. Now, if you think about it, Zootopia, which makes money on the data, which is anonymous, by the way, not on the entry into Zootopia. There are no listing fees into Zootopia. So let's just look at that, apples for apples. If you want to go on Binance, you write a big check out. Somebody does. The holder doesn't care because the holder just wants to sell their coins. But some poor schmuck gets stuck with the listing fees. Dr. Zoo lost $1 million. 1 million. Would have been better off putting it on a different horse on the weekend. But anyway, there you go. $1 million with a number of exchanges because they went down the toilet and wanted to charge upfront fees in order to list the very coins that you guys want to see listed. Now, as a decentralized world that we live in, there's nothing stopping a single Zucoin holder from wanting to list Zucoins on a current exchange. Knock yourself out. You wear the fees. You just ring up Binance and say, listen, we're here. Let's list them. And then they'll send you their BSB and account details in Australia, and you just transfer that across, and you are the legend that becomes the listing fee person. So nothing's for free there. But Zootopia, yes, let me tell you that. If you have a business that requires your tokenization to create more serious wealth, one of those would be, as an example, through even Zoocaz, but certainly a large business, or through, say, something like a Turfstar, there it is. There are no listing fees to list tokens. You could have 40,000 tokens out there which relate to the real assets or real world assets, in this instance, horses, and there are no fees on transfer. That is the game changer, because that opens the floodgates to more businesses coming on board, more businesses transacting in the knowledge that the customers can get absolute certainty of proof of ownership because of split chain, and down the road, certainty in terms of saying, well, those people that own those particular tokens or fractions are not going to get themselves whacked around the ears with a quantum computer that's going to knock off their stuff. Because, do a little reading, people. Do a little reading on the impact that quantum will have. And if you haven't read these summaries that Dr. Zoo put up the other day, go and have a look. Now, I think it's Article 33. Have to check that. But go back, have a squiz, and see what impact this is going to have, and why we now are suddenly, the little turtle is taking over the sleeping rabbit, and that's us. As I said before, you can always jump around and carry on about the opportunities, and you can see the volume of coins that have been lost over the last 5 years and the money that's lost, and even playing around with the FBI, you will see how terrible that's all been for the retail sector. And it's the poor bloke in the street that cops it at every level. what we're trying to make sure is that we give ourselves the best opportunity with the best product that does them and maximizes the protection, because these things are not protected in the current crypto space at all. We do have a comparison there. In fact, I think there's some good stuff coming too, because behind the scenes we're dumbing down the website. You're going to see some wonderful changes there on zucoins.com. We don't want any more complications with people. There's plenty of information. So that site will be changing. Zootopia will be changing as well. So that's in preparation for the new people that come in fresh, looking at the product, which we're getting a lot of interest now. The turnover has been phenomenal. I think we had 100,000 extra views last month, which is without doing much, really, just word of mouth. And we're very happy about that. Very happy indeedy. So now, Cheerful Spirit has mentioned Solana. Not sure what that means, other than that's a coin that's had its fun days and got tangled up with its processing and tangled up with its lack of utility, in fact. So if you're talking about Solana, that's one of Dr. Zoo's favourite topics on why you wouldn't go near Solana long term and why it's had a rocky road because of the type of stuff that's built on Solana. And in the early days, it was a big chunk of NFTs that sort of played around with it. So you'd steer clear of that for sure. But there you go. So if that's the extent of the concerns, people, stick with it. We're okay. We're in good shape. We just sit back. We continue to work at our cost, all these wonderful things behind the scenes. You do not have to worry about money leaving your account. You've got the digital asset. You have that in play. It is all there ready. And away you go. We have had some lazy people out there that it might have triggered them to get proactive, but for many years we've had many emails go out, many reminders and updates about some of the coins that have gone out, and people don't respond. So there was a massive cancellation wave last week, and under clause 8 of the purchase transfers, then of course they have those freebies and bonus ones are gone. That's been withdrawn now officially. So bad luck. Yeah, the old story. You take a horse to drink and if it doesn't drink, well, there you go. You end up with a dead horse. But that's how that is. People that went out, if you're on that list, then you should have responded. I think it was about 9 times actually over the last 3 or 4 years of getting people to remind them to make an effort to contact support to collect coins. If you haven't done it, that's dead in the water as of last week. So there you go. Now, Helpful Settler. Here we go. Just read the following on my bank website. We may limit transactions across all Kudos bank accounts to what we determine to be crypto exchanges or transfers for cryptocurrency purposes to a maximum of 10,000 per calendar month. That sounds about right if that's that case with that particular institution. In our case, the banks that we've had processing, I think we've got, before the radar starts to get worked up with Stripe, it's set, and I'd have to get Riley Redford, our CFO, to confirm this, but I think it's set at about 900,000. So you might change banks. That's the answer to that. Forget about that bank and move on to another bank or another institution. And you can see the anger that's coming out with the banks, by the way. There was a great interview with Mr. Diamond from JP Morgan, who didn't hold back against Brian Armstrong, the founder and CEO of Coinbase. And the gloves are off. The gloves are off. The banks want to change the way the Clarity Act's written, which is all about this stablecoin stuff. And certainly Brian has a different view as to how that should work for the benefit of the crypto industry. So they're knocking heads at the moment. And I think the immortal words of Jamie Dimon was, he said in the interview, something to the effect of Brian's talking, he's full of shit. So there you go. There you go. The old money world is not happy with the new money world because it's starting to encroach on their profits. And it's all to do with interest and fees and charges. And I don't know, people get upset about money, don't they? They just, the funny thing is when you're dead as a dodo, I'll tell you what, it doesn't go in that casket with you. That you're 6 feet under, and unless you're a pharaoh or one of the great kings and you want to take in a tomb, even then the tomb robbers come in and knock it off. So whichever way you go, there's a great saying. Dr. Zoo likes this saying, and that's where you can't get away with not having money. I mean, they say money doesn't buy you health, but I tell you what, without money, Dr. Zoo's helicopter ride wouldn't have got him to Melbourne with his heart attack. So, in fact, there's a cheerio to one of our great coin holders too. He'll know who he is. I'm glad you're alive, Mr. S, because that heart attack that you had and blood clotting and all the rest of it the other week, you have been made an honorary member of Dr. Zoo's cardiovascular group. We meet every Friday. We talk about bits and pieces and the fact that we're still here. But money, people, is only something you need today in case you don't die tomorrow. Think about that, which is why we need to get this thing moving pretty quick so we can get that plane that reflects that exact attitude. Money is only something you need today in case you don't die tomorrow. Now, I'll get another bank account, Mr. Helpful Settler or Mrs. And you just be conscious of how that works. No doubt, if you're buying, then you're going to be in a very interesting situation if you stick with that bank, because 10,000 per calendar month won't cut it. This thing, if it starts flying the way we think it can, both in the medium to long term, well, that might only be one coin. So you buy one coin and that'll be end of it. And you can thank Kudos Bank for that, as we thank the banks quite a lot. They're doing some ridiculous stuff. They love catching the little blokes, but they can't seem to get their grubby hands on the drug dealers and the cocaine dealers and all the rest of it. And in fact, the only ones that are not playing ball at the moment is what was going on with this, which we'll now talk about. We'll now just do a quick rundown on Dr. Zoo's issue for the day, which is all about stablecoins, particularly Tether. Now, Dr. Zoo never really looked at this much, never thought much of it. And then all of a sudden, watching on Fox, or it would have been Fox, I would have thought, Dr. Zoo happened to be listening to the US Treasury Secretary, Mr. Scott Bessent. And he highlighted a very interesting twist to the way the crypto space is working. Now, Dr. Zoo likes a balance. On the one hand, we have Zootopia, where we're heading down the road of Austrac, making sure people aren't naughty, because we don't want naughty people. Right? We want people that have got money, they buy coins, they move their money, and it stays away from Dr. Zoo's. There's no central control of the fiat or the coins, and that'll be the only exchange in the world that's doing that. Let's just think about that. All right? That'll be the only exchange in the world. So we look at these stable coins, and they are a wonderful alternative if you're talking about global transferability of value rather than MasterCard and Visa, because you've got the fees and costs and you've got the reversals and chargebacks. Now, MasterCard and Visa, in 2 seconds flat, can solve reversals and chargebacks. They've known about this for 20 years, right? It's not a problem. In fact, they sort of delve into that space, which is what we do with this 3DS security that we have, where people confirm the transaction, and that pretty well puts it dead in the water. As I said earlier in the Today Show, we had a slowdown on that front because Dr. Zoo wanted to solve that because he lost 80,000 and no one else out there cares. But his grandkid, Paigey, she cares. She could use that 80,000 when she turns 21, and it went. It vaporized because someone did a transaction that was naughty. They did a naughty transaction. We don't want naughty people. And the naughty transaction was they said, look, I'll buy those coins, but I'll deny it later. I'll say I didn't get them. And then the bank says, oh, all right, we'll give you that money, and then we'll charge the merchant. And then that Dr. Zoo takes a hit, and then you've got to fund that money. So you're not interested in that, because that 80,000 could turn into 800,000 or 8 million. Or if we're turning over 100 million a day, it ends up as a massive train wreck. But again, people with coins and all the excitement, nobody cares about Dr. Zoo, and he understands that. He understands that sometimes it's lonely at the top when you've got to put these systems in place and people are in a hurry and they rush around and they want to become quickly wealthy and they don't think about all the back end things, which is what we talked about with instant transactions, and we're not looking for delays, and quantum's got nothing to do with where we sit at the moment with Zootopia, but it will long term, because it means that when you start losing your money and your identity and all of your information because of quantum, it's affecting these banks because they have got all sorts of legacy systems and data, and all goes crazily wrong. Because at the end of the day, you think you get a few bob from the bank, somebody is paying for it, whether it's the merchant or whether it's the shareholders of the bank, which you may or may not be. But it's not there's no such thing as a bank that writes this money out and does the payments for you. When they don't comply with AUSTRAC, and Westpac does 19.5 million breaches of the Act, which should be all criminal, but no one puts their hand up, and pays out 1.3 billion, or CommBank, whichever way, it was 750 million for CommBank, with 59,000 transaction breaches. They don't care. These are people that get big salaries, they're on the board, and they've got shareholders. And again, the suffering comes from people that have those shares, which could be retirement funds, it could be superannuation, and they're already battling Albo and Jimbo for all this capital gains tax and stuff. So Albo doesn't care. They get the money from one group of people and they bank it and they go and blow it up. Where they blow it up, and they put it in some extraordinary stupid things, and it goes out the door again. So it's a revolving door of stupidity. And it works against it. So you're the ones that pay at the end of the day. Now, let's think about this space of, as a result of that, and the question that's been asked, stablecoins. Dr. Zoo thought this is going to be a beauty because technically, even though there's only transfers to one-way transfers with wallet addresses, so you could lose your stablecoins because you've got no alternative but to send it to an address, a wallet address. And if you mess that up, it's gone. Boom. It's out the door. It's in the ether. It's sitting up there with the next spacecraft going to Mars. That's the end of it. Not like the two-factor authentication for Zucoins, because it's got to be signature tested against two parties. And somebody's got to pay. It means that the sender or receiver know what they're doing, or someone's lying. So it's a pretty easy outcome. Now, the US Treasury Secretary gets on Fox and he says the following. He says, quote, "We have seized about $1 billion of their crypto. Just outright grabbed the wallets. Some of them may be typing in right now and might not realise that their wallet has been grabbed." Now, he's talking about, this was a statement that he delivered at the Reagan National Economic Forum in relation to Iranian-linked assets in the crypto space. Right? Now, on the face of it, Dr. Zoo said, "Oh, good stuff. How good's that? What a winner. That's a beauty. Poor old Iranians, they outdid themselves this time. They put $1 billion into some crypto and got themselves their ass in a sling, and they've lost it. Bad luck. No one cares." And Dr. Zoo has zero tolerance of the Iranian regime. Zero. Right? Absolutely zero. They've been a pain in the ass for 45 years on all fronts. If they get hold of that nuclear stuff, we're all gone. We'll all be sitting in Mars thinking, let's hope that the spacecraft can't hit Mars. It'll take too long to get there and we can vaporize it before we destroy the entire universe. But when Dr. Zoo looked at it, he started thinking, now how is it possible that if the Iranians, and it doesn't matter who it is, has a wallet, and they just grab the wallet and your crypto's gone? How does that work? Think about it. Here he is saying they just grab these wallets and their crypto's gone. Well, there's a little bit of a story behind this, people. And this is where it starts to get murky. Murky. Let's forget about the Iranians for a minute. That's gone. They've blown that up their ass. Let's think about there's only two major players in this big space of staple coins globally. You have USDC, which is the Circle USDC, big company, got a few problems, but it's there. And then you have Tether, which is the USDT. And there's billions in this thing. And it turns out the US government did not at any stage crack the private keys. Having said that, the quantum will do that for them. So they've got all this stuff ready. They don't just sit back and say, we're releasing quantum computing without preparations being made to know what they're doing to be able to try and beat quantum. That's the whole point. Same with them when they did 256-bit encryption, right? They always had a back door. Now, let's just say non-custodial Bitcoin wallets. That is where you guys sit on your Zucoin wallet. It's in your back pocket. It's on your USB, or you've got it offline, or you've got it on a piece of paper. You've got it stored by yourself. The problem with this is, and this shows you how stupid the Iranians are. I mean, it boggles the mind to think that they got $1 billion of Tether, USDT, of which 344 million of it was frozen in April 2026 across two Tron addresses to the Central Bank of Iran and the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. So while they're running around bombing the shit out of boats coming down the Strait of Hormuz and playing with their uranium and moving it around before anybody finds it, there's somebody in the back room in Tehran playing with crypto, thinking this is a great idea. We will trade our USDT because they're short of a few bob. They need to get some more drones and buy some more stuff from Russia or China or whatever. And they're running around with this crypto, this USDT. But it turns out that Tether can freeze this stuff. In other words, they can stop the complete through what's called a blackmailing list, a blacklisting of mechanics in terms of how they control it. That is Tether. Now, we thought about it and said, well, how does this happen? Well, they can freeze an address. They can block all send and receives of USDT because you've got to leave your Tether with them. The Tether sits on a centralized exchange, if you like. I mean, it's mind-blowing. Now, Iran relied on these centralized platforms and shadow exchanges due to liquidity, but it's all traceable. So all of a sudden, everybody knows where it is, where it's from, where it's going, and it's on these centralized platforms. Now, of course, you've got to have laws on OFAC sanctions, and that's what it's all about with AML and KYC. And you have this program that says we've identified the Iranian Revolutionary Guard with this $1 billion. And Tether acts on behalf of the government to freeze it. And they effectively froze 1.26 billion, which is on the Tron platform. Now, Tron's got another interesting story. That's Justin's son. He's running around litigation with Trumpy at the moment. But let's talk about him in a minute. Now, the concerns are that you've got regulatory seizure. They can control all of the accounts and all of the USDT that you're holding. Now, the innocent person with USDT shouldn't have any fear of this, but that doesn't stop them transgressing across the line in terms of what do they want to. If you had $100 million of USDT, it would light up like a Christmas tree. And for whatever goddamn reason, they can freeze the stuff. That's the control they have. And also you've got a control issue because they're not sure of the transparency. It's supposed to be that one Tether equals one USDT or $1 US. Now, nobody can get to the bottom of whether that even is true. It could be a huge black hole in terms of this as a stable coin, supposedly, or it's supposed to be just a simple case of representation of $1 US equals one Tether, and magically it moves from A to B around the world. There are now fees and charges. We now have reversal risks. More importantly, which is an absolute nightmare, you have a body that's been created that can now lock down any single address for any reason whatsoever, which is what happened with the Iranian stuff. Now, as I said, nobody cares about the Iranians losing $1 billion, but What happens when that's you? Where do you go? Who do you talk to? It's like that Zucoin holder there before. It just talked about the problems he's got possibly with Kudos Bank. 10,000 per calendar month. There is your centralised control on your money. It's your money. I mean, does the bank realise that you're an unsecured creditor? Technically, if you can't get your money, you can issue a notice of demand, statutory demand, to try and wind up the bank. You want your money. You're a depositor. That's an unsecured creditor. But the banks don't care. Now, in this instance here, the intriguing part of Tether is that you say to yourself, well, who owns Tether? What is that? Who was involved? Well, this is where it gets interesting. So it's like putting the fox in the hen house. It's like putting the little fox in the hen house. And you see how that goes. It doesn't go very well. I mean, it's like free KFC night. Little fox goes in and that's the end of it. And we've experienced that before on the farm. We know exactly how little foxes work when they get in the hen house. It's not pleasant. So the ownership of Tether is a company called Tether Holdings Limited. It's privately owned. And get a load of this. It shares ownership ties to iFinex and Bitfinex. That's the company that has a wonderful Netflix show in its own right about massive sums of coins knocked off and stolen, which are worth billions today. It can't even get its own shit together, let alone being a shareholder and stakeholder in one of the world's biggest transferability of USDT, which works hand in glove with the Tron platform. But let's get to the juicy bit. Now, both Tether and Bitfinex have had massive regulatory scrutiny over their reserve managements of so-called US dollars sitting somewhere and transparency in their overall operations. Now, following a 2-year probe not that long ago, Bitfinex and Tether paid $18.5 million. They didn't admit any wrongdoing to the New York Attorney General Investigation and Settlement Program. Apparently, the core issue involved Bitfinex losing access to $850 million in commingled client and corporate funds held by a payment processor called Crypto Capital. There it is. Boom. Custodialship of crypto and money. Now, this is the supposedly entity that gives you the warm, fuzzy feeling about having Tether, a stablecoin, because you only want to transfer from A to B. Now you've got in the mix the Iranians running around wanting to get their assets unfrozen because Tether can freeze whatever they like. They get a phone call from the great US Treasury Secretary, and he says, we just outright grabbed their wallets. They didn't grab their wallets. They got Tether to say, hey, freeze that stuff. They can't do anything with it, and we'll take them. Now, to cover shortfalls in this instance going back and custom withdrawals, Bitfinex secretly transferred funds from Tether's reserves, which means they're using the USDT that's supposed to back each Tether with a US dollar, to prop up the exchange. Now, what's even more mind-blowing is that this is a private company, by the way, the chairman of Tether Holdings, Giancarlo De Fassini, he owns 45%. He was the CFO at the time. He played the central role in the reserve management and banking relationships in all of this time of which the funds were then frozen. And the regulators found violations of the Martin Act. Then there was a CFTC enforcement in 2021 where Tether paid another $41 million for making untrue or misleading statements about the USDT being fully backed 1-to-1 by US dollars from 2016 to 2019. Bitfinex also paid another $1.5 million for operating an unregistered futures commission merchant activity exchange and in illegal off-exchange retail commodity transactions, violating these prior orders. Now, I haven't met Giancarlo De Fassini, but he was a former plastic surgeon and he suddenly became a crypto financier. He's been named in multiple class actions, involvement in concealing links between Bitfinex and Tether, and misrepresentations about what is actually in the reserves. Now, his little buddy, Palo Adino, he was the CTO, later the CEO. He testified in ongoing class action litigations that's still ongoing about the impact of this misconduct and the effect of the balance of the coins. Now, people think that USDT gives you the right to $1. It's getting a bit murky. So for all the stupidity of the Iranians, they don't even know whether they've got USDT behind them because it's still so murky at the other end. You end up with this massive transparency issue of the very thing that's supposed to be promoted as a global solution to the whole money system. Now, they're planning a comprehensive KPMG report, which is underway. I don't know whether you've been reading the Fin Review recently, but they're not looking too bright either. They've got a few problems of their own. Good old KPMG. As an ex-accountant, Dr. Zhu knows that some of these accounting bodies can be very naughty. Naughty. PricewaterhouseCoopers, naughty. In government contracts and things. We've seen it in the government case. We know that there was a lot of issues in the old days, even before many of you were born out there. Ernst & Young or Arthur Andersen, Enron. It just goes on and on. And then you can see it with the financial crisis in 2008. A lot of the CDOs and all that sort of stuff with the rating organisations turned out to be fraudulent. But nobody seems to be concerned. Nobody seems to end up in jail with this lot. And just to top it off, the final involvement in Tether is good old Justin's son. Now, this is the bloke that bought the $9 million banana. Little bit of paste, a little bit of duct tape, stuck it to the wall and said that's a work of art. Actually, I don't know what happened to the banana. It worries Dr. Zhu that the banana, I think he ate it. He had to have. It would have gone absolute pear-shaped, that banana. But that was a work of art, crypto-based publicity, and the $9 million banana. It might have been six. No, it was $9 million. $9 million banana. He bought that. And a lot of publicity on the back of that. And then he got involved and did a lot of money transfers to Donald Trump's companies as they got involved in the World Liberty Finance coin. And that's litigation happening now. So you'd have another little character being murky in the world of USDT, which is a stable coin that Dr. Zhu talks about. If Dr. Zhu bolted this product on so people get supposedly ease of transfer in order to buy Zucoins, it's starting to put a shiver up his spine as to how this all could end up. Now, Dr. Zhu could have 80, 90, $100 million sitting in USDT because of the sale, and he's ready to pay for the Gulf Stream, and suddenly, for no reason, it's frozen. Be ugly. Wouldn't be good. You think waiting for 8 months to sort out Apple's a worry, or you're sitting there worried about 90 days with Austrac. You think about worrying trying to get this stuff out if that was the way to go. So the regulators, there needs to be a lot of tightening up on this, and I don't know how they're going to do it, but obviously they're working hand in glove with these people now, even though they face themselves massive fines and penalties and all the rest of it. And no one can get their head on how hard is it to do an audit to see if there's $100 billion of Tether floating around, there must be somewhere very quickly $100 billion of US dollars. Now, where the hell's that? You don't need a full-blown audit to work that out, surely. I mean, Kudos Bank knows exactly that you can only process a maximum of 10,000 per month, so they must know the dollars that you have in that account if you want to do more than 10,000. How the hell is it possible between all the auditors and all the companies involved, and BDO Nelson was involved in the early days and couldn't work out what's going on, which fuels skepticism and uncertainty. And suddenly you end up like an Iranian, stuffed. Now, we don't care about the Iranians. Great outcome. Beautiful. Seize whatever they got. Who cares? But This thing's not floating around out there as a USDT just for Iranians. It's for everybody else. And this is where it gets ugly, because the naughty people cause problems for the good ones. Now, Justin's son gets himself tangled up. It turns out that the Tron, the TRC20, so you're talking Ethereum here, people. Again, you've got massive monies in gas fees, and everybody's making a killing, except the poor bloke on the street holding his one USDT, supposedly worth $1. That's all he wants. He just wants to move $1, not on the MasterCard Visa rails, but as a crypto. And it turns into this horrendous nightmare. Now, here he is. Justin hosts a massive share of USDT volume, and it is a central character to the entire Tether ecosystem. So we're all relying on Justin, Tron's founder. Now, he was caught out in 2023 under the SEC lawsuits settled recently in wash trading of Tron, unregistered securities, celebrity endorsements without disclosure, high illicit illegal volume activities. Nearly half of the global illicit crypto went through Justin. Sanction evasion risks and centralisation, market pumping and manipulation. And we're supposed to get a warm, fuzzy feeling because of this centralisation on Tether, that these blokes can wake up one day and say, that's it, I've got that big pile of USDT because you bought or sold some Zucoins, and that was the connection. So that's the concerns that we have in just weeding this out. We've come this far. You might say, well, what's that relevant to where we're at the moment? Yes, we've got Stripe, but if you're talking big numbers, you still need, if you're going to convert to fiat, you're still going to need the rails and USDT or USDC. Now, USDC, which is effectively owned and managed by Circle, which is a reasonably big company and listed on the exchange, and you've got some comfort from the regulators. That in itself's another woe. That's another problem. But we just got to be careful. We've just got to be careful. And this all came about because of one statement on how a US government official was so excited to tell the world about how they just grab these things and take your assets. And what it leads into is an absolute nightmare for everyone else. And at the end of the day, it's that famous saying that we talk about in the crypto space, and the importance for you guys to understand the blend between what we can achieve with the split chain and Zucoin is to give you, on one hand, privacy and sovereign control. On the other hand, you've got the ability to wander into a regulated world and still not get caught up in, because of what we've spent time and money on a structure like Zootopia, which worried other exchanges like Bitfinex. Dr. Zoo's on the record. He talked about Bitfinex and the problems, and it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. Not that he had any insight into this Tether stuff. This stuff's only just happened. It's been building and building for some time. But at least there is a regulatory oversight, which is why, in one sense, it's going to be good with Austrac, because you don't want crap money in and crap money out. And if you're not compliant, well, go and move yourself to Tehran and see how that goes. Right? Pretty simple. Pretty simple. If you're a cocaine dealer, well, you go and do your own stuff. But there's a regulatory control if you're going to change into fiat. That's what this is about. On the other side, by having tokenization and by having all of this in play with the fractionalization, and you're dealing with legitimate merchants and you're dealing with legitimate goods and services, and you do have jurisdictional consumer laws, which is important. If you get a $20 token fractionalized and you can access that on Zootopia, or you get it directly from the merchant, like Harry and Guru. Had a nice catch up with Harry today, going very well indeed. He's still worried about Albo and Jimbo, but there are a couple of extraordinary, innovative, visionary people in that space, and wanting to get ahead in life. A bit concerned about giving 47% to Jimbo for no reason, but maybe that'll change in the future. Now, Harry and Guru, and they're legitimate traders. They've got legitimate real coffee. They're not watering it down. magnificent chicken soup today, nice piece of bread. You bring that together, and if they say there's a $20 voucher as a token, and you've got that on Zootopia, and you can check that against the chain quite easily, and that becomes your sovereign right to that $20 token, and you've got that in your Zucoin wallet ultimately, you can deal directly with Harry and Guru. You don't need a Justin. You don't need a Justin son sitting in a position of power with his mate, his little friend up there. Goodness knows where he is, but we're talking about Giancarlo Devasini, the plastic surgeon, who's now a global international guru on Tether, comes up with his bright idea of holding $1 against the crypto that's built on Ethereum, for goodness sake. You don't have to worry about yourself about those guys controlling what you do directly if you are not converting to fiat and you are moving it to merchants directly. And that is the Zukaz model, which is certainly in a firepower position to be white labeled for others and the bigger players, because you are in control of the network that you have. That's exactly what you want to be. Now, in this entire scenario, people, as a closing message, it hones back in on a couple of core principles that you need to, which is what we have safely delivered, and we will explode this through where we want to be in a position down the road. Doesn't affect Zootopia, doesn't have a delay, it doesn't get all sweaty under the collar and worrying about things, right? The successes that you've seen on each of the boxes that have been ticked are all for our own long-term benefit, which is what we've been doing, right? It's maximising protections, but certainly these are the things that you've got to keep in mind on this note about when you start to think about other cryptos. 1, self-custody. Move your long-term assets to non-custodial wallets. That's what you have in the firepower with a Zucoin wallet. You can play games and trade, and there'll be some real exciting stuff in Zootopia coming down the road. We've got all sorts of gamification and strategies you'll be able to adopt and, get the best deal you can between a buyer and seller and all the rest of it, both in terms of price and number of coins. You're going to see some action there. That's about almost being very addictive to the trading. You won't want to sleep. At the end of the day, we're going to have a lot of sleepless people around the world. There will be people walking around like zombies. Why? Because they've just spent the last 10 hours trading on Zootopia. They can't stop. And it'll be a whole new world. You won't need AI for that. There'll be lots of new therapists coming out of university. There'll be all sorts of wonderful businesses and creation of new jobs for people because of Zootopia, right? Doctors, it's going to be fantastic. Sleeping pills, you're going to need that. That's the sort of trading firepower you can do with the right concepts that allow you to trade directly with other people that have custodial of their own Zucoins or tokens in your own back pocket without going near the exchange. That's important. That's the self-custody number 1. 2, try and minimize custodial exposure. They're saying here that you should use exchanges for active trading only and withdraw promptly. Now, that's a concern. I mean, there's an advice to trade, make a few dollars, and get the hell out of there. Now, I don't know what the Iranians were thinking, but if they'd have done some homework with what Dr. Zoo's just done and looked up this mess of a thing called Tether and Tron and ERC20, and what openly talks about how they can freeze your assets and mess up your wallet addresses and allow, literally grab your wallets and then you lose the lot. It's mind-blowing that for all of the negotiation that we see happening with Iran, you got some fruitcakes there that get this money trapped because they use the very same things that they're advising not to do. I mean, it is incredible. I mean, Dr. Zoo would love to be on the negotiating team, negotiate with the Iranians. I can tell you now, right? The whole joint would have been privatised by now. If you want to have a religious chat about it, well, you go off somewhere. Look, that should be the first lot to get on a plane or a spaceship. Elon takes the bookings and moves them on so they can get settled down and relax comfortably out there in Mars and and do what they do best. So negotiating, I mean, it's just absolute stupidity. There's nothing ingenious about looking at how these centralized networks and exchanges and Tether and all the rest of it work, and then wondering why in the hell they've beefed it up. They've probably knocked it off. They've probably knocked off $1 billion like little Kim Dong-jung, and he'll get a burnt ass as well at some stage because he'll be leaving this crap in the same thing, and they'll just take it off him, which is great. That stops a lot of the nuclear program. Russia must be a little bit smarter. Not sure what good old Putin's doing, but he hasn't been caught up in this sort of scenario. So maybe he's been following the tick boxes that we all see in front of us right now as to how not to get yourself burnt with these particular crypto. The third point, stablecoin caution. This is the one that Dr. Zoo liked very much. Dr. Zoo nearly went like a bull at the gate, thought this is a solution for transferability of value around the world, and it's a train wreck. It's like the early days when Dr. Zoo tick-boxed all the problems that Satoshi had done. Friggin' nightmare. Blockchain, most ridiculous concept on the planet. Adding data that never ends. The Great Wall of Bitcoin. Massive computing power. Computers that try and work out a ridiculous algorithm to make sure that the next transaction is real because the first one's real. And you go back in history, I mean, what absolute nonsense. And here we have the same now. It's not a stable coin at all. There's nothing stable about what the Dr. Zoo has just talked about. Not a thing. The greatest unstable risk concept. You know, if you had a bank, let's say Kudos, it must be licensed or regulated. If you said to Kudos, listen, what about you as a regulated bank, hopefully under the control of the Reserve Bank of Australia, and they've got someone looking at you, and you've got your reserves and everything else is working fantastic. What about you hold all these US dollars in one big account, one big fat account that says USDT, and let everybody publicly see on a live feed how that account goes up and down. Now, there's a winner of a site, just so you know. There's an absolute crackerjack site that my great CTO picked up. Now, I haven't even got the address here, but it's worth looking at. It is an absolute ripper. Now, Dr. Zoo has saved it. But if you type in, is AI profitable yet? All right, is AI profitable yet? And it's a wonderful site that gives you a live feed of the dollars spent, the dollars received, and how much profit these companies are making. Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, Meta, Oracle, OpenAI, Anthropic, XAI, and they're all in the red. It's a live feed. This will be similar to the live feed you'll see with Zootopia. This is the vision we have. You just put on there and the little thing ticks over the 3 million miles an hour and it shows you the price differentials. Beautiful. Just type in, is AI profitable yet? You probably get the site. We can share that later with you. We might get support. If you send a note into support at zucoins.com, I'm sure the boys will send you a link. And it's worth looking at. At the moment, since I just turned this app back on, it's showing 1.9 million in the last few seconds has been spent on AI. All right. And at the bottom, the only company in all that's making any money, it's just made another 299,000, is NVIDIA. It's made $478 billion of revenue. It's shot out the door 225, so it's in front. All the others are down the gurgler. Not a single bit of profit, which I will eventually get to SpaceX because I want to talk about XAI as part of that division that's bleeding to death. Bleeding, blood, red everywhere, people. Even adjusted EBITDA. EBITDA. You adjust the EBITDA and you're getting a twitch. You know, that's it. Like that little pig, porky pig. So there's no, that's the third point. There's nothing stable about stable coins. Diversify or prefer decentralized alternatives. And that alternative, I'm saying to you people now, that alternative is staring you at the face. You are at the cusp of greatness with your Zucoins. Why? Because the technology is showing itself to be well ahead of the game. Well ahead. And be even more so when we lock down this quantum stuff as well. That's our mission while you guys are enjoying trading and having a great time and price movements and more people coming on board. Yes, we do have more Americans coming on board. I want to thank you guys. For our American friends, got a lot of time for our American friends. There's a huge, big population base over there that have crypto, and they have suffered. They have suffered massive losses, but they are still in the game. Unbelievable. The fourth point is best practices. Hardware wallets, multi-signatures, seed security, blockchain monitoring, and awareness of evolving US rules. That's why we spend a lot of time and money, people, keeping an eye on what's happening in the great US of A. Because if you can tick that box, you've ticked the biggest box in the world, because they're burning everybody else's ass. It's unbelievable. As I said, the Iranians, they just got to touch up. I don't know who did their homework at the back end, but maybe they couldn't read the English component of the documents that said that we're going to freeze everything you got. I mean, I just cannot believe it again. This sovereign country, up to its ass in more nuts than a fruitcake, playing games with the world's biggest power, get its ass burnt. Should be burnt even more now, but anyway, we'll see what happens. And then they're chasing money, and it's sitting on a centralized stablecoin issuer that's controlling its money. I mean, it's unbelievable. That's what you guys don't want to do. And the last one, the last box, that's the fifth point. And we'll wind down here right now. Education. Start custodial if beginner, but transition to self-custody for sovereignty. Now, these are the words, the great words that are coming out, advices. We didn't write this. They were the 5 points that have come out as core recommendations for people in the crypto space. Self-custody, number 1. 2, minimize your exposure to custodial exchanges. 3, stablecoin is not stable. 4, best practices. What have we said? Download your wallet, back the damn thing up, put it on USB, chuck it in the drawer, get it off your internet. Don't let any schmuck out there start to get hold of your stuff because you've been stupid with not being able to have quantum resistant or protected stuff that's coming over the next little bit. Because it's not Zucoin you've got to worry about, it's the other stuff that you've got on your computers that's going to get attacked, and attacked quickly. Because, let me tell you, countries out on the fringe, Ying Dong Yung and Dong Dong Ding and all those sort of countries, they are the ones that got the smarties that are trying to use and will use this technology to get what the West has put in play and hasn't put in protections. And you can see that even the US of A itself, whilst they're excited about getting that stuff, grab your hands on $1 billion from Iran, it's put everybody else at risk, because the facts speak for themselves in terms of how USDT is operating. And it's bloody scary. Best practices, and then finally education. Read, people. Read. We have multitudes of information on all these things. We've talked about it for years. We've put up the red flags as to what's going on and the concerns. It's on the Zoo AI. It's on the blogs. It's on earlier shows of Dr. Zoo. You can read this stuff. There's nothing there at the moment that we haven't talked about that has been flagged and has been quite rightly picked up as a problem in this industry. It's a friggin' nightmare. We're trying to stay ahead of it, and you need to read. In fact, we had one of our close friends the other day, Friday it was. Now, we've talked about the people don't read. You don't want to read your emails. You don't want to read that you've had 3 years to get your coins, and you don't want to read that Dr. Zoo says, okay, bugger it, they were free gifts, they're now been cancelled, that's the end of it. Game over, right? That's it. You had your chance. Game over. You don't read. They don't read anything. And the same case goes for even close associates of Dr. Zoo. You know, the other day we had someone ring late Friday. Oh, what's going on? Now, Dr. Zoo finds it mind-blowing. Sure, they're close friends and they stay there and they say, what's going on? We haven't had the information. And Dr. Zoo says, listen, stop playing with his head. You're not in the Truman Show 3.0, right? There's no bubble. Dr. Zoo's not interested whether that was a joke or there's a bit of sense of humour before the race on Saturday, or where you're coming with this. In all seriousness, it turns out couldn't be bothered to read. Can't be bothered to read the emails that have been going out. Can't be bothered to read the website. There's truckloads of information on myzucoins.org. That's straight out of the head of our CTO. If you want stuff on how the technical side works, go to my zucoins.org and you will extract the very essence of the brain power that's coming out of that gentleman's head, Robert Novak. And it'll go straight into your head. And then we say, because we had people that don't want to do any of that, don't want to listen, they don't want to watch, they don't want to read, wondering what's happening, they don't want to understand that we're not here to delay because of quantum, we're here to improve and follow through, which is the excitement in that last update that went out as to exactly mapping out what we're doing. We decide to have Facebook Fridays. 2 paragraphs, pretty simple. Facebook Friday, Zucoins, look it up. It's a bit of a summary. It's actually close to 1 sentence for Zucoins and 1 sentence for Zootopia and an attachment of the industry major things happening for that week. For goodness sake, how hard is it? So let's get on the front foot, people. This is going to be unbelievable territory we're coming into. We have got this game that someone somewhere is going to invent and will do so. It's Dr. Zoo's too old for it. Getting old. Look at this. That app I just spoke about, the AI profitable yet. Since that few minutes ago we talked about, another $15.5 million has been spent on AI. It is running rampant. How they make that money back, I have no idea. But there you go. NVIDIA's picked up another $3 million in profit. What a concept. This site is amazing. Amazing. In fact, I didn't find it. Our CTO, Robert Novak, gave it to us at last week's meeting, and I've been impressed ever since to look at this, what the industry's doing. So the industry, just so you know, by the way, as a collective group of AI, has spent $1.4 trillion with a receipt of $613 billion back, of which $253 billion has gone straight into the coffers of NVIDIA. Unbelievable. So while they're distracting you with AI, you better keep an eye on what's happening around you, because quantum is going to be the next explosive thing that's going to really cause some disruption, especially in the wrong hands. That's why they're getting ready for it. And we are getting ready to explode the growth, taking advantage of AI. We haven't spent $1.4 trillion, but let me tell you, if they keep spending that, the better it is for Zucoins, because you're going to see a lot more action in this front as to what can be achieved with that AI. So there you go. That's it, people. Have a look at that. We'll try and put out a little burst on this Tether stuff, because that's a very, very interesting backdrop to people talking and chatting to you about stablecoins. It's probably easier to buy an NFT of a monkey than it is to worry about what's going on at the back end with your stablecoins, if you've got some, and you're going to wonder how in the hell you're going to get large chunks out. But that advice I just gave through this update, which is not to do with us, but the tick box of, if you're trading with exchanges, get the hell out of there. Rearguard action, and then keep it off exchange in a non-custodial wallet, whatever you got, because it's going to get ugly. Well, people, thank you very much for your time again. Let's get stuck in it. We will try and get to SpaceX. Let's try and focus singly on that on Thursday. Any updates that we get immediately receive from Austrac, we shall share with you. It shall be either a special burst email, or it shall be on Dr. Zoo, or it shall be on Facebook Friday. You have plenty of places there to look. Keep an eye on it. We will not leave anybody behind, unlike Albo. Everybody's left behind. We're all stuck. We are all stuck on the Albo boat. I've got some ideas to try and sort that out, but I'm too old now to get in there and have a crack at Parliament. But there is another way. There is another way, and that was in a great movie, Dr. Zoo. On that note, we'll finish. It's a great name for a horse. There is another way. Rottergill's running this Saturday, people. Let's hope we bounce back in a big way, and we'll give you an update on Sky Glider. That poor bastard, he was in real trouble. We're not sure what happened, but we'll find out. Cheer, everybody. Enjoy. And yes, let's keep staying focused and watch out for those werewolves out there that want to take everything from you. We're here to try and put the mechanisms up in protection, and that's what we're about to do. Just watch those werewolves out there, because they are coming. They are coming at you.